The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of our guests and do not represent the views of any of the mentioned studios.
Hello, and welcome to the third episode in the Bins Bytes roundtable podcast series. I'm Philip Roberts, founder of the Bins Bytes community. Join me now as I discuss with 5 members of this community their tricks and tips for editing video game trailers. Derek, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Derek Lieu. I have a company called Derek Lieu Creative because I couldn't come up with a more interesting name. I've been doing game trailers for about 10 years. I've worked as an editor before at an agency called Hammer Creative. Before then, I had experience video editing at a movie trailer company as an assistant editor. I've worked on Half-Life Alyx, Among Us, Psychonauts 2, Ooblets, Dead Cells, whole bunch of stuff.
Thank you. And Jeremy, if you could just introduce yourself to the team.
Howdy, I'm Jeremy. Worked at Crytek for 4 years now. I was a mechanic before this. Sort of landed this job through a contest that Crytek did with Hunt Showdown. Started as gameplay capture artist. In my spare time, I put as much time in to learn the engine for cinematics. And now I'm technical supervisor, so I sort of try and keep an eye on pipelines and whatnot and still do all the 2D gameplay and cinematics, whatever's needed.
Thank you. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Emily Kolm. I've been a trailer specialist for about 13 years. My experience started as a junior at GOG.com a million years ago, feels. Worked on mostly Ubisoft titles such as For Honor, Rainbow Six Siege, Watch Dogs 2, Assassin's Creed, things like that. And then I worked at Valve PR for 4.5 years, doing like a ton of different kinds of trailers. But it sort of honed me in on my focus on working with indie games specifically. So as of April, I went freelance. So I have my own company, which is also Emily Kolm Creative. I promise I didn't steal it directly from Derek, but Derek helps me out a lot, so maybe I did. But so I've just been independent since April, and that's it.
Fantastic. And Gage?
My name is Gage Allen, and I've been making trailers for 17 years now. I run a company called Player One Trailers, and I've written, directed, captured, and edited a bunch of stuff for games like Baldur's Gate 3, Pacific Drive, Ark, Stellaris, and Pistol Whip, and tons of stuff. But yeah, I'm self-taught, so I just fell in love with the art of trailers and was like, I want to do that, and started making fan trailers, and then just slowly just taught myself how to do it over the years. So, nice to meet everyone.
And Johannes?
Yes, nice to meet you too. I'm Johannes Lehner. I work for THQ Nordic as a senior video editor and capture artist since 5 years now. And before that, I was working 2 years as a videographer in esports. And that's where I basically had my kind of start. But yeah, I'm loving the job. And my favorite projects to work on so far were Biomutant, Outcast, The New Beginning, Alone in the Dark, Disney Epic Mickey, and South Park Snow Day was also a blast. And many others I'm forgetting now, but yeah.
Brilliant. So I'd like to just focus on the art of editing the trailer with the gameplay that we have captured already. And I'm just wondering if we look at how we start this. It's almost like a writer looking at a blank page. Where do you start? Do you always have the same things that come to mind? How do you assemble stuff? The sort of structure that you go through for this? Maybe Derek, I could start with you. What's your way of working?
So after I've done the initial capture of the game, which is just pretty much the entire thing, I'll just start organizing footage. So if there's dialogue in the game, then I'll do a dialogue breakdown where I'm just organizing it by everything that sounds like it might work well in a trailer. Say I have 3 hours of dialogue, then I'll try to organize that and whittle it down to things that I'll take out the things I'm like, actually, this one won't really work. So it'll be organized into things like, this is good exposition. These are good lines about what this character's motivations are, or just things about them. these are good lines that might explain gameplay in an interesting way, and just the things that are needed to just illustrate the key points about the game. And then there'll be like miscellaneous things like, I don't know, barks and grunts and things like that, or exclamations that people make. And then on the visual side, similar sort of thing, I'll organize based off of maybe like a game mechanic or the story that is told through the cutscenes or through gameplay. So say if it was like an Uncharted game, there'd just be a visual string of like climbing, puzzle solving, shooting, the different scenes in the cutscenes, or like the things that would make good like credit shots. So usually something comes out from that. Like whenever I'm stuck, I always just organize my footage some more. But I'll go to either the creative brief or the notes that I've given myself, or the dev gives me about the things that we want to cover, and start figuring out, just putting some of those things into the sequence. And also I'll put in things that are like the mandatory things. So if we absolutely have a pedigree card, like from the writer of Dragon Age for Stray Gods, or we have this one title card for all the different voice actors, like those are things that absolutely have to go in there. So I'll just put those in there as sort of like kind of tent poles, because that will help me determine the dividing spots in the trailer. And that will also help me figure out if one music cue is working well or not, if maybe I'll need multiple music cues. Maybe one music cue is good for just the opening, then you need to transition to something else later, or maybe one can cover all of that. If there's dialogue, there's usually a lot of like notepad documents and paper edits that I do, where I will also just sort those things out and try to make a draft that reads well. And I'll also even put in my notes like cold open, intro, escalation, climax, and button, because certain lines just sound like they belong in that act of the trailer if you do this enough. It's like, well, clearly this is an exposition line for the intro. Clearly this is like a joke for the very end, which it always can fiddle around later on, but it's a good place to start, just so then that things aren't just this giant mess of footage, just to bring a little sense to it. So that's just like a good starting place for me.
And it sounds almost like your experience as a movie trailer person is coming into play there, especially the dialogue and the escalation of how you tell, because that's very much the structure of a movie trailer as well. Do you find there's a similarity?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if there's dialogue. If there's a game with no dialogue, then I'll think more about the game loop. So, like, think about Spelunky. You start a level, maybe you uncover some gems and you collect money, then you kill some enemies, then you go to a shop and you buy something, and now you can use that. So I'll think about the game loop if it's a very gameplay focused thing. But if there's like dialogue and very crunchy gameplay, then I'm sort of thinking about both. How do I have the dialogue tell the story and have that fit into the game loop, and then show the game loop multiple times, so then that the story is told, the gameplay is understood, and it all hopefully flows together. But depending on the game, some will be more gameplay heavy, some will be more story heavy, and I'll sort of adjust a little bit based off of that.
How's it for you, Emily? Is it similar?
It's similar in some ways, but like sort of inside out in others. So it starts with identifying the message that the client wants to communicate with the trailer, because with that comes like an array of different stories we could potentially tell, right? And so the way I've visualized them is in 3 acts. So we were saying like Derek was very movie trailer oriented. It's very much the same sort of process for me. I'll start with music, usually, even if it's not the music that's going to end up in the trailer. I am picking music that's going to allow me to establish the structure first. And then I can place sort of these key messages or beats that I want to appear in the trailer, like physically in the timeline, and then adjust things with sound design and moving the music around and things like that. So that would be my starting point. From there, say I had dialogue to use, it would be the same sort of organizational procedure as Derek. But for me, I feel like when I go through dialogue, I'm finding things that are just supporting the story I've already sort of begun to tell with the structure that I've laid out. And so in that way, it's sort of like it's based on vibes mostly. I feel it's just what I would feel like is going to support the message that I'm trying to communicate with which beat in the structure.
And using music that isn't probably going to be the finished piece sometimes can be quite dangerous, because you really like that piece of music because you've been working with it for so long, and then it swaps out for the license piece, and it's like, do you get that sometimes?
It's a bummer, sure, but I have had, like, how am I going to phrase this in a way that's like really actually polite? Like, I've had my ideas sort of shot down in that manner many times over my career, and I think it's kind of an essential part of the process, to be honest. Like, if I find that people are more likely to know what they don't like first before they know what they do like. And so it's sort of a process of elimination in a way. I do have to put a deadline, like, after we pick the music here, and then no more changes. No more changing the music after this point. Otherwise, then it can become a total nightmare. But sometimes I want to work with a really cool piece of music, and maybe the budget's not there, or the client doesn't like it, and I just have to, all right, that's cool. Yeah. I'll find something cooler, probably. So.
And sometimes I've had it where I just put shots down onto the timeline, and then with the music, and it's like, oh my God, that works so well. That really is a happy accident. And then it has to change. It's like, oh, but that was working so well. What about you, Gage? How do you work through?
Each project I find is very different. And it's usually vibes. Like Emily said it really well. Like, vibes is probably the best way. I've never really fallen into like, okay, this is how because some trailers I'll go in and I'll start with like the music, and that's like really helpful. And other trailers, like a lot of my trailers, I write a narrative over it as well. So like some of them we're pulling VO from the game and doing kind of an organized like movie style edit. But a lot of them we're creating a narrative from scratch, or we're creating a multi-trailer narrative. And so there's characters and writing. And so those will usually start with like kind of getting a basic structure of just feeling the music, the sound. I do our sound for the trailers, so I tend to work on that as well to just try to find the feeling that I'm looking for. And then I do a lot of like temp VO. So I'll write lines and I'll just voice them myself. And usually like for like the big Stellaris trailers where there's all these empires like screaming at each other, it's just 80 versions of me going, what are you doing? And no, don't do that. And it helps me figure out like what feels right. But yeah, it's really weird. Like, I've never really landed on like a particular process when it comes to that. The trailers that really come to mind that I think are really vibe specific are like Pacific Drive ones. Like, those were very like we start with a conversation to understand kind of like what the studio wants, kind of like what Emily was saying. Like, that's usually the goal, is like, okay, what is this? What is the purpose of this trailer, and where does it fit in the campaign? And like that really helps guide it. But I'm very fortunate that like with longer term relationships, like I think it's like the goal, right? Like we all work with clients who have very specific ideas of like what they want to do. And then there are those clients who are like, you know what, just do what you think is best. Like do like, and you're like, oh my God, like I can't believe you're letting me do this. And those are the ones that really let you experiment and like throw in like, here's a tonal draft for ideas. Here's one that's actual structure. So I feel like I'm probably the least organized of everyone here, because I'll like throw out 4 drafts in like a day of like, here's this this idea is really cool, but we're doing VFX on this, or motion graphics or whatever. But I do a lot like with what Derek was saying with titles, like temp titles, just putting in like, I'll put white text that's like climax sequence here and title card here, and just kind of vibe my way through it. And then eventually, you kind of like discover, like Philip, like you talked about like happy accidents. And I think that's probably the biggest thing of my process, is just trying to optimize the entire system so that as many happy accidents can happen. Because there are so many of my best ideas with editing or making a trailer or whatever come from complete just chance of took this chunk of the trailer out, some clips smashed together that just timed in a weird, unique way that gave me an idea that I was able to improvise on through the edit. So I usually just start trying to like see what happens, kind of like a little bit of like a kid in a sandbox. But yeah, that's probably how I've done it. And it just depends. Some trailers are more organized than others.
Discussing similar approaches of using music a lot. Do you use click tracks, any of you, at the start? Okay, because that's something with the disappointment that I discussed with Emily, that sometimes the track isn't allowed or gets changed. I found sticking to a click track with the right BPM for the music that I know is going to be there. It allows me just to place the edits in places knowing that this is going to happen using the click. And then when the music comes in, it sits underneath.
I'll always start with the music that is from the game, just because sometimes it just works out great and I don't need to ask of anything of the composer or talk to a production music company or anything like that. But usually it needs a little bit of modification if that's available. I worked on a trailer for Katana Zero. That's one of the only ones where I just got the MP3s or the AIFFs and just cut together the music for that trailer. But a lot of times it's a situation where the music works really well until maybe the very end climax where there is no climax in the song. So we'll ask the composer, hey, can you add an ending to this? But for temp music, it's usually just the game music. And if it's just really not the right energy, then maybe I'll find a temp track.
I tend to tap on my desk. That's my click track. I feel like it's a lot smarter to use a click track, but I just kind of, because I'm a drummer, so like I think I tend to be able to follow the beat structure decently well. But yeah, I just like tap. I will sit there and listen when I'm remixing. Like Derek, I don't know if you've ever done that where like you're remixing a part of a track and they're two different tempos, and so you have to keep track of the actual BPM. And I'm always sitting there listening and going back. I'm like, that sounds like I'm rushing it. So I tap on the desk and then let it play, and I'm like, oh, I am rushing it. God damn it! So I have to.
If there is no music, just try to find my own internal rhythm. Like, oh yeah, this should go here, and I'll like put like my body into it. Like I have a standing desk, so it's easier to sort of plan that out.
I'm just imagining Derek headbanging to a trailer with no music.
A little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's got a music of its own, right? Like the beat and flow of cuts. Like, do any of you guys try that, like without music and just trying to do something? Because some trailers, like I've had to do without any music to help it, but there's still a flow to it. I'm curious, like if you guys have had to do that, and if so, like is it kind of like what you're saying, Derek, where you just kind of feel the beat and like try to move it that way in your own rhythm?
Gage, you mentioned tapping on the desk. I like to add another level of chaos to this technique and tap marker as I'm tapping the beat on my keyboard, just like here, 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 here. You know what I mean? Like like an internal rhythm. And which just for certain areas, I think that I would feel really like constrained by a click track. For me, like I like when the tempo changes, for example, or the pace changes, or there's lots of peaks and valleys to the structure. And then so how I sort of decide what I show where is based on those peaks and valleys that are created by the emotion of and the intensity of the music. So if we're coming up, it's this big moment of anticipation or intrigue. And then when the pause happens, that's a space for information to go, like a title card or like a gameplay mechanic needs to be explained because we've come up here on this mountain peak, and now we're pausing for reflection and are able to absorb information, and then we go right back up again into another peak.
Yeah, and you've picked on a good point as well, because if you cut every time on the click track as well, it feels very rhythmic. It just doesn't feel right. And it's a case of finding that sometimes it's a gunshot that's on that click. It's a piece of action, a fall or something like this, not the cut itself, which really helps, I find, on that way. Jeremy, what about you? How do you start a project?
We usually just only work on Hunt Showdown. So I could divide it up in either gameplay or cinematic trailers, where with gameplay, I usually just look at the brief of what they want, what are the new additions, because it'll be like maybe a showcase of an update or an event. So I just go through that, go into the game, see what everything does, how it looks, and I just sort of divide the video up in parts of where I want to show what, to have a sort of build up and still show sort of gameplay for newer players as well. So you have the game loop, and it shows all the new additions for all the people that already know the game. And when it's an event video, we usually just use the actual event song. We have our in-house band that makes the music, so we just go with that, and then I lay it on there and see. I just throw the clips on there, not really listening to the music much until like it's getting to a tighter edit, because sometimes you just put stuff on there, and there's certain parts in the song that just happen to work with a certain clip. And then I tighten it up from there and see maybe, this clip is pretty cool, but it doesn't really work with the length of how I want this to be. And then see if I can replace it with something that's different, or even I might even end up with something that's better in that place.
And are you starting on the timeline, or are you roughing this out with like paper, just planning stuff out, or do you just start assembling text and stuff onto the timeline?
I sort of just started in my head because I played the game for like 2,000 hours, so sort of just visualize in my head what I want, and then if it's a multiplayer thing, I need to plan out what I want. But usually, I just sort of go in already by myself, just in the build, capture a rough idea of what I have in mind without any actual players there, just to see on the timeline how that will work. Then I can, like, from visualizing it in my head, write down what I need other people to do and in what moment and from what part, so that we can sort of organize it. So we usually go from there. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but it's how I do it right now, especially for just the gameplay part. The whole cinematic part, we usually sit together early on as a department and go around thinking of the general story that the trailer should tell, because it's usually just an event update, so it has lore pieces. So we go over what's the lore, what do we want to show, how are we going to do it. We create a storyboard, so we cut the storyboard up in an animatic, so you already have like sort of the music for the event again. Then we cut up the animatic in sort of rough pieces of how long you want the shot to be. And then from there, we start creating the actual cinematics, and then you tighten it down from there, because even with the storyboard, I find it hard to really gauge if something is going to work or not. You have it sort of in big lines, but when the shots come in, it might not work. You might want an extra shot somewhere in between. Maybe something needs to be shorter or whatever. So as soon as the shots come in, you sort of tighten it down till you have the actual edit lock. From there, it's just polishing, replacing the shots with the latest.
Yeah, and with cinematics, I think the cost of creating the cinematic scenes needs that organization, needs that planning with the storyboards more than the gameplay, because I like to say gameplay's cheap, but it's not cheap, because it's a lot of effort and time that goes into it to get it there. But in comparison with actually creating shots from scratch, that you're there.
Yeah.
Johannes, what about you? How's your starting point?
Yeah, first of all, I'm really happy that we established vibes editing as a thing, because I was a little bit scared that you're all super organized and I will be exposed as a fraud, because I kind of do the same. Like I definitely start in the software. Like I just feel like that's where I'm home, like in the timeline itself. And kind of similar to what Emily said, like try to find out the vision of the client. In my case, it's almost every time the producer of whatever game I'm, having to create the trailer for. And so I try to stake out, first of all, what I cannot put into that trailer, and where that trailer in the whole campaign kind of is, and, what the players already maybe have the potential fans have maybe already seen, and what we haven't seen yet. So I try to like create my own little playground where I can then get creative in it, I would say. And so first it's kind of like a process of elimination where, I'm just like trying to figure out what can't be inside. And then I usually start with what excites me the most at that time. And that can be like, if I maybe already have a great song to be licensed, then I'll just go from the song, and maybe like certain parts of the song you already know in advance, like, okay, this is going to be like perfect, the perfect climax or whatever. And in most of the time for me, that's also like the narrative dialogue scenes that I like to watch first, and like kind of put as tent poles as well, if the trailer allows, if it's like if the game has kind of like story and dialogue. And I love that, like just watching all of the cutscenes like again and again and really getting familiar with it. Or if it's just it can be animatics as well, but you kind of get a feel already. And then I usually put for gameplay, I put text placeholders first, and I always try to work with temp music. And one of my guilty pleasures is sometimes that when I really enjoy a trailer right now, like be it from a movie or from a game, I might put the, solo the music with some AI program or something, and just edit on that music, because I can, like, if I'm excited about a trailer, I will watch it like 50 to 100 times. And like I sometimes I'm in the gym and I'm listening to a trailer because I just love the music so much or something. So, and that's kind of like, I would say, working with this temp music, or just in general with anything that excites me about the trailer, that gets the project to a state where I'm, always excited to go back to it.
I think you're absolutely right. That I know a trailer's working when I'm sat at home, 10 o'clock at night, watching it for the third time in its rough state on my phone, going, that's great. That's it. It's got me now, from that side. One thing I think we've all picked up on, and this is something that Derek's introduced me to a couple of years ago, is that trailers have different needs and purposes, but Derek introduced me to the marketing funnel approach of where does your trailer sit in the marketing funnel, what type of trailer that would be, and how that's different. And that's something that I've also pass on in the electives that I do with my students. How do you approach each of these? Obviously, you come with a brief from a client, but how do you get yourself into that mindset of that type of trailer?
I think about what are the questions that the audience has at this phase. So, of course, at the very beginning, it's like, what is this thing and how is it different from anything that came before? And then if it's a gameplay mechanic, if it's a story premise, that needs to be the thing that is frontmost in the trailer, then need to focus on that. Like, even when I'm doing something that is for like a fan base, I will still generally try to make it for the people who haven't seen the thing before. And what I'll do is think of the fan base when I'm doing like Easter eggs or blink and you'll miss it sort of moments, because I know that fans of the original Spelunky will just watch the trailer frame by frame for Spelunky 2. And sometimes they'll pick out things that I didn't realize I put in there. But there are some situations where I'm like, ooh, this would be like a gameplay spoiler for this like part of the section of the game. So maybe I'll change something to hide that. But I'm still always coming back to like the basic story structure of like certain things just need to be explained in a certain order in order to be understood, unless there's an existing fan base. So like if it's an update video, then of course I don't have to explain the whole premise of Among Us every single time I make an Among Us trailer. Like I can assume all that knowledge and just move on to the thing that is different and just focus on that thing, because especially with Among Us, because it's just so widespread, like everyone knows about it. It's like one of the few games that my wife knows exists because she just doesn't play games in the slightest.
A lot of what Derek said is makes a lot of sense. And I've always said like the goal of, like for me at least, in my like subjective experience, the goal that I try to achieve with every trailer is you want it to be a long-term memory. And, because people will watch, like if you make a cool trailer, people will watch it, but you're not going to convince every single person that watches it to buy the game immediately. Like often what you're hoping to do is that, months down the line, when they start to think about buying a game, or they're on Steam or they're looking at something, that's something about your trailer connected with them and became a long-term stored memory, that they're like, you know what, there was this really cool thing. That kind of looks interesting, and I'll buy it. And like that has always been the big thing. And so whenever I'm trying to design like a whole marketing campaign for a game where we're doing 6 assets, 10 assets over the course of 2 years from announcement to release, it's always about what is the best path to becoming a long-term memory. And repeatedly showing the same things usually means that you're going to lose the effectiveness of that. So if you show all your cards in the announcement trailer, like you're not going to be able to use those to the same effect later on. Like you're going to have to be more and more creative. And that was a big thing. Like when we did Pacific Drive from announcement to launch, like it's such a unique game and it's just dripping in vibes. But if it's not done, it can look kind of like a generic driving game in the wrong hands. Like you really have to work hard to make everything unique. So every trailer had to like answer a different question, kind of like what Derek was saying, but also do it in a very creatively unique way that's very different. So people understand that the game is like that as well. So the announcement, we're just kind of, it's just tone and atmosphere. And then we're showing some of the gameplay, that at least the gameplay that was ready at the time. So people kind of get the basics of like, okay, you're driving a car. It's got weird stalker vibes. It's got Silent Hills vibes and everything. And these weird things all over the attaching your car and all this kind of stuff. But we're kind of teasing that just so people get that first like bit of information and they can start thinking about that. And then we did the gameplay trailer, which was this massive 3.5 minute trailer that was like, a lot of my trailers have like a short film-esque style to it. They're all in game, they're all live. But I love being able to film them and make them look really good. And so that trailer was the full gameplay loop. It was like, okay, how do we take what the kind of tone and atmosphere that we had and create a full gameplay loop on it and make it really clear what the gameplay is. And, the fact that it's kind of this run-based system. You get in your car and you drive out and then you return to your garage. And then tying in like some of the original like retro VO that we designed that's not from the game, but it's a sort of like training module of like, module 1, you take care of your car. And then it's this really fun kind of atmosphere to it. And then we did the story trailer. And so that was because the big question from everyone at that point in the marketing campaign was, what is the actual story? Is there one? And that's where we started to answer that question and introduce the characters. And we pulled the VO from the game and we're really crafting this narrative and sort of uneasy tone for it. But probably the most well-known trailer we have now was after that was the release date trailer. And my goal with this is at this point, we have 3 trailers that show 3 different things, answer 3 different questions. You don't want people to have to watch 3 trailers to really kind of get a really clear picture. And so the release date was our attempt to do 1. And so we combined all 3 of those, the atmosphere and tone of the announcement, the gameplay loop of the gameplay trailer, and then the story of the story trailer into one trailer, which was a really complicated thing. But we wanted to essentially have that at that point in the process, when a lot of the game is showable and ready, we could show more of it in a more creative, sort of unique way. So we licensed a song from J. Hout and we built this really cool sort of style. And then the launch is like your big selling point. That's where it's like title card of it's this kind of game. And this is the cool stuff about it. Here are the selling points, because you're going to be using that and doing 30-second cut downs and whatever. So it's really about answering questions, but also tailoring it to each game. And yeah, that's in my experience, that's usually when I design it that way. That's usually how I approach it.
I also have a script writing background as well. And for me, structure, as Emily said, is quite important. I use the 3-act structure when setting out the trailer. But also from writing, when I write a script, I have the whole premise of the script in one sentence just stuck on my wall. It's like every scene has to have an echo of that premise. Every motion has to be there. So there is a core to it. And the same with the trailers. It's like, this is a DLC trailer that has to sell this. Or else I think sometimes you can get lost in the fun of just creating something that you're just having, you're a kid in the candy shop and you're getting all this stuff together and this is really good. And you create this beautiful piece of art for your theatre, but what's it actually doing for the game? And you have to always remember you're here to sell the game, at the point, and to bring people to these features.
Like what everybody said so far is like pretty on the nose with how I feel as well. But when it comes to especially indie trailers, in my experience, everything, like, attention is very fleeting. And for games that are, trying to gain a new audience, or even coming back to their existing audiences, every trailer, or even if it's just one, is sort of the deciding factor in whether or not, it's going to generate interest for whoever the audience is. And no matter what the message is that we're trying to communicate, it's important that we establish, like in any trailer, even if it's returning fans, even if we don't need to explain the whole game or anything, we need to establish context right away in the trailer itself, and sort of set people up for being able to understand the information that comes after that by setting them up with foundational knowledge that they can then build upon or that they build upon the more and more that they watch, basically.
And do you think with indie games, there's more of a need to, you've got like that one chance with that trailer more than if you're with a big campaign of a AAA game that's got a lot of excitement where people already engaged with the announcement of it are looking for more stuff?
Yeah, it's a very saturated pool, right? So everybody's sort of trying to, like, you know, get all these games are amazing and cool and interesting, but there's so many of them, and you kind of have to, you know, climb to the top and try to be more interesting than the person before. What's really important for these trailers, especially, is that they encompass everything that is core to communicate about their game that pertains to the message that they're trying to communicate. So even if it's an announcement, it still needs to capture your attention within the first 5 seconds. Even if it's just all vibes, no dialogue, no talking, no nothing, you still need to follow some kind of flow and some kind of structure that's going to maintain engagement throughout. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to have people leave, just like Gage was saying, with something that resonates with them, that they take with them after watching the trailer. And that's going to lead them to, okay, no, I want to look that up on Steam, or I want to watch that trailer again so I can like get a better idea of what that game actually is. What we're trying to accomplish is that everyone who watches sort of leaves with a general understanding of what that game is, whether it's just vibes or atmosphere or specific gameplay, and that ultimately that understanding generates interest somehow.
And I would say, from looking at YouTube stats as well, and where you see fall off and bits like this, literally the first 10 seconds is really important, or 5 even. And therefore, there is a trend of showing the whole trailer in the first 5 seconds and then showing the trailer.
I was about to ask you guys what you think of this trend.
It works. That's the crazy thing.
I don't like it.
Like, statistically, it works, which is insane. Like, and I've managed. I took advantage of this because like, if you have a slow opening trailer, you're going to have retention rates are just going to drop generally. Like, unless it's like you show a Naughty Dog logo or a CD Projekt Red logo that people are like, oh my God. Like, if you don't have something like that and it's kind of an unknown, people are usually going to drop. Whenever I do a slow trailer, the mini trailer in the beginning immediately helps by just giving people a straight, clear idea of like, here's some gameplay, here's what it looks like. This is just enough for you to understand what is kind of here. And then oftentimes we'll see retention rates will stay a lot longer after doing that. Like, I did a 4.5 minute dinosaur story trailer for Path of Titans that had this insane, like, it was all gameplay, but it was like cinematic gameplay, and it was all like lore that I had written about dinosaurs and character. It was insane. I was having way too much fun, and you could probably say I was being way too greedy because I was like, oh, I get to tell a story with dinosaurs. But retention rates were 70% throughout the whole trailer, and which was insane. Like, and every trailer we did this trilogy of lore, which again sounds insane. It kind of goes against what you would think would work, but like, the stats showed that worked. And I think a big part of it was the mini trailer, like that. So, but I know we've had debates with editors who it just drives everyone crazy. So I'm going to let everyone else talk now, because I want to hear that.
Could dismiss it very easily as like, then these kids, they don't have attention spans, but like you said, it's just like it works, and it, to be honest, like, it helped me multiple times to convince people of my ideas, or when I was just doing way too much like narrative in the beginning, again, just, working with cutscenes too much, and then, maybe the marketing department or whoever feedbacks it, just like, 30 seconds until we see this first, actual gameplay, that's too long, and I'm like, I got you, like, don't worry about it. Here's 5 seconds hype. We could just call it the 5-second hype intro. And they're like, yes. Brilliant. And problem solved.
And they get to use it as an asset. They get to like cut out and then use it if they want a 15-second, 10-second like ad or something as well. Yeah.
As a like trailer fan, I hate them. Because especially if I'm more committed to watch a movie trailer, then I'm committed to watch the movie trailer. So I don't want to have the trailer spoiled before the trailer. So, but I do recognize that you do have to hook people right away. But what I don't like is just that it's footage that's already going to be in the trailer later. So if I do something of that style, I'll make sure that the first 6 seconds or 10 seconds are just their own thing, but functionally have the same effect of this is what the gameplay is. Here's a quick overview before we slow down and sort of introduce the game mechanics. So I don't think I'm trying to think if I've done any trailers which do have footage from within the trailer within that first burst in the beginning. But usually what I do is try to just have a like really chunky gameplay bit at the beginning. So the trailer I did for Deliver at All Costs, that is just one opening shot, single take, but it's not cut fast or anything, but it is gameplay from the beginning. So the opening of that is just, there's a little bit of dialogue from like a radio ad saying, hey, there's this delivery company that's hiring, go to this address and get there. And the main character's like, oh, gotta go there. And so the beginning of the shot is just them leaving their apartment. It's sort of isometric camera angle, and they get into the car. And as soon as they get into the car, the music in the car starts and they back up and they break through like the building behind them. Then they keep on backing up through more buildings before they turn, go forward. They go through another building, hits a bunch of cars. So like my hope was that, by giving gameplay right away, they're more willing to keep going. And then within that shot, have that act structure to hook them. So that's how I try to do it if appropriate or if I can.
And as a viewer of that trailer, that worked. The moment it went through the next building, it was like,
I had
to
fight a little bit for that because they had that sort of conventional knowledge in mind. It's like, oh, but it's not an exciting opening, which like exciting is really subjective. Exciting is not the right word because not all games have action. Some of them are, maybe they're a cozy game, but like, it's more like, I don't know exactly what term should be used, but it's maybe not exciting. It's just, you got to give them the juice. And for each game, the juice is something different. For Deliver at All Cost, the destructibility of the world is the juice. And so I said, like, look, it's gameplay right away, and we see the hook of the game like just a few seconds after it starts. And then we just keep going, we start escalating. And maybe just by virtue of my years of writing blog posts saying, this is what works, they backed it away almost immediately. They said, okay, you know what you're doing. I'm like, okay, great.
And it's that unique selling point as well, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, this is unique to this game. This is the hook that gets you.
Yeah, and that one on PlayStation, I think it made like over 700,000 views, which for a trailer that I release, that's like really, really good. I can usually tell if there's a lot of organic growth if it makes over, 100,000 views, because it's really hard to get your eyes on trailers, especially in indie space. Even if it isn't like a showcase, it could still just be like 40,000 views or 20,000 views. It can be really tough.
Like, what I don't like is sort of a teaser trailer before the main trailer. What I am okay with and what I do like and I've utilized a lot is the sizzle, which is what we're describing as like this sort of hype cut in the beginning, especially for games like we did. It was part of the structure for all of the hero videos for Honor back in the day. It would start with a quick sizzle and then go on to the rest of it. It's really useful. I think that sizzles are a great hook as long as they serve their purpose, which is to create hype, get you interested in what you're about to see, and establish some context to what you're about to see. But just repeating things that you're about to, like repeating stuff and like sort of having a mini version of the trailer before the trailer, I feel like it's a little spoilery and it kind of brings the momentum down for me a little bit. I think you have to establish a strong hook in the beginning, like Derek was just explaining, but there are lots of ways that you can go about that too, no matter what the pace is. I think that people generally respond really well to differences. So like when we're watching a sizzle, the pace is a certain speed and then we stop and then we come back again for another pace. And so the difference is there that we're experiencing, and pace is sort of keeping us engaged without us really being conscious of it. And so differences like that can be expressed in tons of ways, like with color, with sound. One of the ones that comes to mind is I did this trailer a few years ago for this game called Hitchhikers, which was really interesting about this game is it was meant to be extremely accessible for people who are visually challenged. And so they used a lot of lots of layered and sort of spatial audio in their game. And so I tried to bring that into at least the very, very beginning of the trailer. So what you're seeing when you open the Glitchhikers trailer is not necessarily, I mean, it is gameplay, but you're hearing more than you're seeing right away. And so that was one of the more like interesting, fun hooks that I tried to build for sure.
I have just a really short one because I'll just use it in the one that I'm working on now. And just like Derek, I didn't use any of the footage that's already in the trailer. It's just a quick sort of hype cut of some of the new stuff that's in there real quick with some exciting booms and whatever and PvP. And then it just goes into the actual video. So I have to see if that actually works. We'll find out after it releases. But yeah.
And if you don't go with this mini trailer in the first 5 seconds, you need to have some sort of hook to grab people anyway. What's your favorite hook that you've ever created?
I'm most happy with my announcement trailer for Recreation, which is like a racing game, kind of like an arcadey racing game, but you can also like build your own world. Like you have tons of objects that you can build, and you can build your own racetracks. It's like a sandbox racing game. You have tons of races, but the special thing is that you can also build your own racetrack, and you have like fun objects as well. And I thought like, okay, if nobody knows about this yet, this might be a good opportunity to play around with that a little bit. And so I made that intro of that trailer kind of in a way where we recorded like with some voiceover artists, like fake radio hosts that just kind of talk about what's going on in this world. You know, like all of these things are appearing all of a sudden in our world, like what's going on. And so we as viewers also don't really know what's going on. And just midway through the trailer, you kind of realize like, oh, this is actually like, this is us as players who are just, you know, going crazy in this world. And I think to kind of like people guessing regard was kind of a good idea, but also I found the perfect music track to license. So I think that was also part of it. So
I really liked the Firewatch trailer where he's in the cave just kind of joking around with Delilah. I remember when I came up with that idea, Sean Vanneman, the writer, just said like, I would have never thought of that. I'm like, really? Like, it sums up so many things in this one scene, and it's really funny. And we also picked it because it was going to be in the PlayStation E3 press conference, and I just went on the assumption that it was going to be surrounded by a bunch of like beige shooters, which had people like dying and bleeding or something like that. So I'm like, let's have a joke in the middle of the show.
But I must say, Firewatch, by the way, who's in the tower was the bit that took me to the game from that trailer. And
which
it was like,
I'm still, I say it all the time, I'm still amazed that we didn't get people who are angry at us for basically faking a scene. It is fake in that scene doesn't happen in the game. We synthesized a couple different moments for the sake of that. But like no one said like that part didn't happen in the game that way or something, which I would have expected based off of how people react to trailers where things aren't one-to-one the way they are, and especially because people were so hooked by that moment. So I'm happy that no one was angry that I know of.
I started working on Stellaris trailers in 2017. I did about 5 years of those, and we kind of like before then the trailers didn't necessarily have like a ton of like original story. It was pretty like, this is just, there's a lot of UI in the game, and it's very like, a lot of Paradox games are like that. It's very like spreadsheets and whatnot, but they're like crazy addictive and super fun. And so one of the things that like I had started to do was, well, what if we brought in VO that represented how the player felt and how it can feel to have empires sort of combating and you're growing yours, and there's all these like really complex political games occurring. And so we did a trailer for one of the expansions called Apocalypse in 2018. And I opened that trailer with, there was like an announcement cinematic that they did, and there was like a story trailer that they did, but they were disconnected. And so I spent the first 20 seconds opening with news reports that we had created, that was all VO that we had done, about the announcement trailer planet that got blown up. And then the story trailer was this whole thing about these people trying to defend their planet before it got destroyed with this massive like Death Star. And so we spent the opening with all news reports trying to connect the two and like give some lore and give some tone and story to how it might feel. And then we spent the middle part of that trailer going over the features and showing how cool it is. And then we kept VO throughout it. And then at the end, we had this hook where, like, as the planet got blown up, we cut to the cinematic from the announcement trailer so people could see that what they were actually seeing was from earlier, from that opening story. And we found that really worked well. Like, it seemed like players really enjoyed having something like an opening hook that was very kind of story specific, that contextualized the experience for them, like, and what they go through as a player, and then ending on something that really sort of gave this full circle moment that made it go like, oh my God, that's awesome. And like that full circle feeling, I think, is like what I always try to hit at the end of every trailer if we can, because then you just get this really cool, like when a really awesome story in a movie like resonates and the thread gets resolved, there's this level of satisfaction you get from it that's like, oh, that's the shit, like that was awesome. And trying to get that at the end of a trailer is like a really big point. So that's kind of, I think, how I try to approach it, at least now. But yeah, we were doing that back in 2017, 2018. That was very like, I don't know, we'll see if it works. And luckily fans would theory craft on it, which was kind of cool.
The opening shot and ending shot, I was always taught as I was learning the craft that we all participate in, that those are the two most important shots. The opening one needs to be essentially like the second best thing, and the final one is the best thing. Certainly with trailers, like especially Ubisoft trailers, in my experience, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, we did a bunch of work for that. They apply the similar technique that Gage is talking about. So we always called it bookending, where we're trying, and if you'll notice, if you watch some of these trailers from that era, especially the Assassin's Creed ones, and I think they still follow the similar structure today, that they'll open with a story, they'll sort of come back to it at the very end with some epic, like, I don't know, jumping off a cliff or into the sunset or whatever, like some epic final shot. But that tends to be the way I like to go as well. But I'll go through footage and like I'll save things for later that I think are going to be epic enough for the ending, but then what I ultimately choose, that it changes as the edit sort of comes together. So I wouldn't choose it right away. It would probably come to me as I was editing it.
I feel like I should be thinking about the end montage more than I actually do. And I know that I've heard from movie trailer editors, a lot of times they'll just start with the ending because this is the climactic bit and it's also the most fun bit. But I usually end up finding out that I get to the end and realize I have so little time to actually do a montage. So I'll have a trailer where maybe it's just 3 or 4 shots for the end montage, which I feel it's like barely qualifies. But by the time I end, I'm like, but it's fine. I think it's good. So I think like earlier in my career, I probably thought about it more. And now it just catches up to me like, oh, wait, I got to find some really cool shots. And I mean, usually I'll find something. As far as bookending, though, one story I'll share is for years, I wanted to have that book ending structure. My inspiration is the trailer for Crank with Jason Statham. So it starts off with like, my name is Chev Chelios, and today's the day that I die. And it ends with that same way too. And I always wanted to do it, and I couldn't find any project that would work with that until I got to do the Psychonauts 2 story trailer. So that one starts with, well, it doesn't start that way because it has a cold open, but the beginning of the intro is like, my name is Raz, and this is my first day at the job. And so it starts that way, and you have the whole trailer, and then by the end, it becomes like sort of ironic because it's like, oh my God, all this stuff happened. So it ends with, my name is Raz, and today is my first day on the job. So that kind of, in that context, like, oh my God, so much happens in this game because this was like one day on the job. And I finally got it. I'm like, yes, I got to do my Crank homage.
I love Crank. No, I'm I love that story though. That's so cool.
Is there a task that you have when creating a trailer that you think, oh no, now I've got to do that? Is it the 15-second version that's now required as a banner ad somewhere?
9x16
versioning in general.
I was like, I know what Derek's going to say.
It's just versioning. Like, even though like I have the page on my website that breaks down like every single legal line. So it, like on the outside, it should look like I'm the expert. But every single time I have to do it, it's like I'm doing it for the first time all over again. I'm checking like my own website. I'm like, oh God, is it a registered trademark or is it just a regular trademark? Oh, I got to change the year on this. And then like the bit rate's different, or and it always takes longer than I feel like it should. It always takes at least a day, and if there's even more versions, and sometimes I'll know the context that a version needs to be used, but they'll still ask for like another one on top of that. I'm like, you don't need that version too, because that situation won't come up. But sometimes just easier to just do it and just have an ESRB version, a PEGI version, an O rating version. And the best though is if I have like a graphic designer who can actually lay out the logos well, because I look at some of my really old trailers, which have like the logo soup, they call it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not a graphic designer. This is awful. I worked with my friend Dana, who's a graphic designer, on I Expect You to Die trailers, part 3. And I just gave her all this information, like, how does this fit in one end slate? And she did it. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And she just gave me the slates and just had to plop them on. I'm like, oh, this is a dream. And I did have one project where I negotiated my initial quote was too high for them. So I said, okay, I'll bring it down if I don't have to version. And they said, okay, great. Like, fantastic. I'm happy.
I once had a trailer that required 32 versions of the trailer. And that at the end of your production schedule is like, right. And I really hope that all 32 were used correctly and distributed right.
Well, when you do it on all platforms, like, it builds up like to 32, 35, especially when it's mobile as well. Like, it's just an enormous amount of work. There's NOA and NOE, and then there's the NOE eShop, and then there's the Japanese version that you also need to do. And then you have Sony, but then they want Sony Japan as well. And then, oh, but wait, they changed the brief like a month ago. And so now you have to make sure that's different. It's the wrong shade of orange, Gage. You shouldn't have used the wrong shade of orange. Nintendo's mad at you. So it's so much work. And I feel like that's a legitimate thing to like, oh, I don't have to version. That's the dream. It's the dream. Getting the master file and just being like, like it's like kind of like just relaxing. But yeah, the versioning stuff is so hard. I really hate doing 9x16s. Like, you do wide 16:9s, you get if there's motion graphics you're doing, it's like, oh, that's great. Okay, 1x1. Okay, we can do it. That's fine. It still works. 9x16 where you're panning the frame to try and keep things, like, it's literally ripping hair out because it's just so much work. And so if I can have another editor of ours handle that part, I will gladly let them do it.
Panning is always slightly not really working, whereas you have to show everything, but it's really awkward.
It's just so awkward.
Terrible.
Or dialogue boxes, like, that just span the whole screen. It's like, you can't do anything. You just can't. and then I'll come in a situation where it's like, well, maybe I could redo it in After Effects, but then it wouldn't be true to the game. So you just cut it off. I don't care.
Yeah, versioning is brutal. I think we all agree on that.
we have a dedicated person who does like mostly versioning. And I'm super happy that I don't have to touch that too often. To keep it updated all the time, right?
Because as Derek touched as well, it's like the latest logos. The logos have to be there. I've had stuff come back from Sony because they changed their logo and I wasn't aware of it.
It's like, we changed it to a slightly paler blue, or they gave the bong, but they have it all with the hard coated or the burned in legal line, which the version I had, of course, said 2024. So I'm like messaging everyone, my friends, anyone have it blank? Anyone have it blank, or with 2025? It's been a minute since I had to export PlayStation versions.
That happened with Captain Blood. Like, it was like literally 2 days after they updated their brief or something. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, it was just, I felt so bad because I was like, I triple checked. I was like, everything looks good. Everything looks right. But even we had Xbox did something similar, and they changed the motion blur of the like zoom in it was like a little bit more motion blur, and they denied us because we had the one that had a little bit more motion blur than the one they changed it to. It was like insane to be like, oh my God, like that is yeah, like trying to optimize that process is like just, yeah. So I'm jealous if anyone has like a dedicated person for that.
Like, what will kill me is sometimes I will go to like the official Xbox or PlayStation channel and check the other trailers. Sometimes I'll see something like, that shouldn't have been approved. How come this person got in? They got in.
Exactly.
Ultimately,
like
it's still the humans approving or disproving it. So it could just be luck.
My rep never would have let me get away with that.
Especially with Xbox, with having to go through the logo, where you see a lot of trailers that just don't do it. it's just black when it goes through and then it starts. It got hammered into me like, no, it needs to start while the axis.
That's funny because I think they approved I think Captain Blood, we didn't do that. So I feel slightly called out here, Jeremy. But they approved it.
Well, it was Phil that hammered it into me, and now I just can't unsee it. Every time I see an Xbox trailer, I'm like, this is bullshit. Yeah. It should start. It should start before this is...
Meanwhile, like the indie trailers where they have all the platforms, just the Wild West, because the ones that are for every single platform, like, Nintendo's not checking. So they'll just have like the logos by themselves without the word parts in it. I'm like, that's not permitted. You can't just put the Switch logo. So I'm the curmudgeon that they've gotten into my head. Yep. And then like ESRB is also the Wild West where like everyone has a different font. Yeah. Sometimes it's square. Sometimes it's like a really long rectangle.
Sometimes there's an outline. Sometimes there isn't an outline.
And then sometimes it's, obviously off Google image search. So it's super low res. And I'm like, does the ESRB give a shit around this?
Yeah. I had to make my own entire template for ESRB when I was doing it. So I was like, okay, I need to do this all one time and make sure that it's accurate, because versioning takes me a few days because I need time in between to then look at it again with fresh eyes and be like, am I insane? Is it actually accurate? I need a couple days to really be able to see it correctly. So, and
then replacing button prompts. If you ever have a trailer that shows, I see the jadedness in everyone's face, the blood draining from our face. The amount of times it's okay, well, we shot this on PC, and either we reshoot with different controllers, or the build's broken, so we have to do it in post. And then you're watching the trailer at this far from the screen to make sure is that an X? Is that a PlayStation X? Or is that an Xbox X? That must be an Xbox X.
When you're then QCing all these versions, usually maybe one little thing in the middle of the edit, you'll spot I could just change that. But then I have to do everything to do it all again. I wouldn't have seen it unless I'd watched it a dozen versions. I'm like,
exactly.
Should I? Yeah. No one's going to notice. Yeah. I'll notice.
But I'll know. I'll know. I'll be in bed at 1 a.m. I should have changed it, man. It could have been better.
Before we close up, I just would like to see if each of us have a tip that we could give to people who would be wanting to do trailers or has started doing gameplay trailers. The one thing that you would advise people to do to make their lives easier.
One, I would say it's a tie between two. Being as organized as you possibly can, it makes a big, big difference. The more organized you are, the less of a hassle you're going to have in your edit. You keep your project clean. I am a stickler for this kind of stuff without being too pushy about it, especially if I'm on teams. Having a junior, that was one of the first things that I teach them is here's how you set up your project. Here's all your preferences. Here's how everything is neat and clean. And you're going to copy that template every single time you do a new project. So it's all exactly the same. We're going to use naming conventions. Everything's identical because all that work up front saves you hours and hours and hours down the line. It's tied with another, which is just to get very comfortable with receiving feedback. It's a super iterative process, this job, and any art, it's subjective, and a lot different eyes are going to have different opinions. So just get used to feedback and ask for it constantly, and just learn how to not take that stuff personally. It's not about you. It's about trying to make something super cool.
I agree with the organizing. That's the biggest one, especially just naming all the files that you have properly, because you never know if someone's going to take over your project. And it's cool that you know that recording 11012 whatever is this clip, someone else is not going to know anything. Just take the time to organize as best as you can and make sure that, especially in a team, to have an actual project template that everybody uses, so anybody can take over and everything's named, and then anyone can just jump in and continue. Even for yourself, if you're working on a project and you don't work on it for a couple of days or maybe 2 weeks, you get back to it, you might also not know what you were doing if everything's super messy.
For somebody who's like maybe just starting, even thinking about learning editing, and maybe who's just excited about video games and wants to, be the entry of it, I just want to encourage them to do it. Because if you are passionate about this stuff and you want to learn it, then you totally use it, and use that energy and learn it, because it will just be a general encouragement. And if you're starting out, I neglected sound design for the first 3 years of my career, and I encourage you to not do that. And don't just save the YouTube tutorials to watch later, but watch them. Right? Watch those sound design tutorials.
It's hard to do when you start out, but it's understanding the balance of taking feedback and also knowing when to push back. That is a very difficult thing when you start out. I think a lot of people, they either start out almost fully a pushover. Yes, man, I will do every feedback thing you send me, because they don't really know if they're new, or they start the other way where they're like, I am the only one, I am the one that knows all and you know nothing. They approach that way, right? Which I think you can get taken advantage of really easily if you're not careful. And I think it's to really try to find where you feel comfortable in terms of accepting feedback and understanding not to take that personally. And then also when to stand your ground and kind of believe in your vision and kind of stick to your guns, and how to do that. Start practicing that aspect of it. And I think the big part of it is taking emotion out of it, because that is something that I think we all kind of struggle with. I especially still struggle with. Someone I'll be this is amazing, and then the feedback's terrible and it's a hard cut, we can't do this. And then you kind of have to be all right, just get over it and try and figure out how to make it work, and what is there that works. But I've also I think you can get taken advantage of pretty easily. So it's knowing when to stick up for yourself, when to stick to your guns, and then when to sort of go with the flow and try and bring someone else's vision as well.
And it really is a hard balance of between they are the customer that you're a service for, but yet you're a master of a craft, and they have to trust you as well.
Related to just doing it is finish your projects. So if you're going to do a fan trailer or do music video or something, just finish it, even if you're it's not really exactly working, because finishing it is a skill too, and pushing through something is a skill.
100%.
And I have so many abandoned projects that I'm not going to rewatch this fragment of a fan trailer that I made, but I'll rewatch old fan trailers that maybe I didn't fully like from beginning to end, but it's still fun to watch.
Basically how it started with game montages, and then I'll just watch a tutorial and get inspired, I want to try that out, and I just try that one thing out, and then I'll be okay, and then the next time I make something, I want to try something new, just learning one thing with every video that I did, instead of trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, you gotta get your reps in.
Yeah.
So there's that. And related to giving yourself projects, try to think of one thing per trailer or music video that you're trying out. So I look at my old fan trailers and I'll see ooh, this is when I tried out doing a music stop down, or this is when I was just syncing to the beat, or this is when I tried a certain type of dialogue editing. And that's the thing that I remember was the takeaway from that one. So don't try to just put in all the techniques that you see, because you'll just drive yourself crazy. And then my one really practical tip is just copy your main sequence often and leave yourself notes. So whenever I'm about to make a big change or just try a different thing, I'm going to replace the cold open with this shot, I will copy the sequence first, start a new one, and then in parentheses afterwards, write out what I'm doing in this new version. So then I have a history built in. And then whenever I send a version to a client, then I'll put that in its own separate folder. So I know exactly the versions that I sent to the client that they've seen. And then I'll have my other folder of work in progress things that sort of lives parallel to that. It'll pay dividends in the end.
I'm pleased you mentioned that as well, because I think everyone here has gone back to a previous version and taken that little section out from a previous one and put it into the new edit because it was working a lot better.
I duplicate my sequence every day. Yeah. Every day I get on, I open it up again and make a new sequence.
Jeremy, you just reminded me, obviously we go back a long way. And when you went in the competition for hunt showdown making trailers, you would go onto servers at different times of day in different countries because you know they wouldn't be occupied as much, and be able to get that footage without being shot at or without being, and it's just thinking outside the box sometimes on what you can do to get the shot that you want and how can you achieve
It didn't work all the time. I mean, I got the shot, but then you have to extract, and I usually just stop paying attention and just beeline it for the extraction, and then you just get shot and you're still dying. You're like, oh, come on.
I'd like to thank you all for taking part in this podcast. It's been a delight to have you here. I'd also like to thank you all for being members of Bins and Bytes. And I say to everyone else that's watching this podcast, please, if you're a professional, come and join the Bins and Bytes group on LinkedIn. And also take part now on Discord, which is growing nicely with the group. Thank you everyone for your time. It's been a real pleasure. Hopefully I'll see some of you again in next episodes of this podcast.
Nice.